Assalamu alaikum everyone. Thank you for joining us for this webinar today on coping with change and uncertainty. We've got representatives from a lot of great organisations here. Feel free to ask questions during the webinar. You can type them and they'll be read out, and if you want to direct them to a particular organisation, then do let us know. So first of all, my name is Jamilla and I will be chairing today's webinar. So let's just go round and we'll get all the organisations to introduce themselves, inshallah. Just to also let you know that this webinar is recorded. Okay, so if we start off with you, Sheikh Saeed.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, everyone. My name is Saeed Nasser. I'm a counsellor and a clinical supervisor, and also a volunteer as an imam here in Maleque Masjid in West Midlands.
Great. Ayesha.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. It's great to be here. I'm the founder and director of Sakoon Counselling Services. We're an organisation that offers counselling, but we combine mainstream therapy and integrate culture and faith. We do other projects in the background as well.
Great, thank you. Sahar?
Assalamu alaikum everybody, my name is Sahar Beg and I'm the founder CEO of Mindworks UK. We offer counselling psychotherapy on low cost basis, and I'm also a clinical supervisor, and we also do various projects, and we take counsellors on placement for as a main thing that we do predominantly.
Thank you. Faeeza?
Assalamu alaikum. I am Faeeza Vaid, Executive Director of the Muslim Women's Network UK. We're based in Birmingham, but are a national service. We do research, advocacy, and campaigning on issues affecting Muslim women. And we also run the Muslim Women's Network Helpline, which I'm sure we're going to be speaking more about later.
Myira?
Assalamu alaikum everyone, my name is Myira. I'm the founder of the Muslim Counsellor and Psychotherapist Network, a network that supports lots of Muslim mental health practitioners, and I also work as a counsellor and supervisor as well.
Great. Kathleen?
Assalamu alaikum everybody, my name is Kathleen Roche-Nagi. I'm Managing Director of Approachable Parenting. We deliver parenting programs across the UK from pregnancy up to teenagers, and also deliver Me For You pre-marriage course, relationship coaching, and we have trainers that are volunteers, or parents that are volunteers, to help and support other parents.
Great, thank you. Farhana? One second.
Assalamualaikum. My name is Farhana. I'm the Outreach Manager for Inspirited Minds, a faith-based mental health charity which provides support work, counselling, training on mental health to imams and the public, as well as providing articles around Islam and mental health online and on social media. Outside of IM, I work as a trainee psychological wellbeing practitioner, and I have experience as an assistant psychologist as well. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Zohra?
Salam, my name is Zohra. I am the Director of the Muslim Youth Helpline. We provide emotional support and signposting for young Muslims nationally. We're at myh.org.uk.
Great, thank you. And lastly, Dr. Omer?
Hello, assalamu alaikum everyone. I'm Omer Maghrabi. I'm a consultant psychiatrist in South London in a CAM service, but I'm here representing the British Islamic Medical Association, or BIMA, and we do a lot of advocacy and other work in all areas of either medicine, nursing and pharmacy.
That's great, thank you everyone. So as you can see, we've got a lot of experts here from all different aspects of mental health. And all together, we have come together during this period of lockdown to form a national CRG, a response group to mental health, and really try and help Muslims with their mental health during this time. So we've had quite a few questions on all different subjects come in. So we'll start with the first one. And I think the first question will be to you, Myira. So someone has said that all of this quarantine time has meant more one-to-one thoughts, more one-to-one time with my thoughts, and my anxieties are going wild. How can I keep calm and carry on?
Well, that's it's a great question, because I think so many people are coming to counsellors with this very thing. First of all, I kind of want to say that it's absolutely natural. It's completely understandable and natural for people's anxieties to kind of be kind of through the roof. These are really, as cliche as it sounds, kind of unprecedented times, but this is so unusual that for people to know how to cope and what to do, you know, straight off, it's impossible to know. So first of all, to feel anxiety and to connect to those feelings is first of all completely natural and normal to do so. Second of all, it's then about, okay, now that I'm connected to those feelings, what do I then do about it? Now, there's a couple of tips and techniques that I can quickly go through for people to know what to do with your anxiety. The first thing is, when we start to get connected and start to attune to our feelings, I think the first thing is always to be mindful of how much time you spend on your own and in your own head. And I think this isolation and lockdown has meant that for a lot of people, they're spending a lot more time on their own. So first of all, just track within yourself how much time you're actually doing that. There is something around, it's really good self-care to be connected to your thoughts and your feelings, but an overindulgence in it or spending too much time in that actually will disconnect you then from the people and the things around you that are actually going to support you in your mental health. So whilst you are connected to your feelings, really do make sure that you're also spending time with other people and connecting to other people and not just to yourself all the time. A couple of hints and techniques then. One, which is journaling. By doing so, what you're doing is you're getting all of those thoughts, anxieties out and onto paper. What that means is that anxiety in generating all that emotional energy within you, you're actually directing it and channeling it somewhere. To keep it within you, all you're doing is having this build up to a point where people then may have panic or anxiety attacks. So journaling is a great one to get it out there. A couple of other things. One technique which I particularly really do recommend and think that's appropriate is that a lot of anxiety is a feeling of lack of control and worry about things that are unknown to us. So one really good technique that I really like to do is, if you do feel that your head is swimming with all of these anxious worries and thoughts, is again, get them onto paper, but it's to actually manage them. So I'd recommend that for 10, 15, 20 minutes, sit down and literally write down all your anxieties and thoughts onto a piece of paper. And then with all of those thoughts, then go through them and apply 4 questions. One being, do I need to do anything about this worry? Do I need to delay anything about this worry? Thirdly, do I need to delegate it to somebody else? And the 4th thing is, do I need to ditch it? Now, applying those 4 questions to each and every thought you have on a piece of paper, by the end of it, you'll actually know what to do about it. Because very often, anxiety is energy that's going without an action associated with it. So you just sit with it. So by getting all these thoughts and anxieties onto a piece of paper and applying a very proactive approach to it, do I need to do anything about it? Do I need to ditch it? Do I need to delegate it? Do I need to just delay it? You're actually then assigning action to those worries and anxieties, and that actually helps you to know what to do with them. And what you will then find is, by applying those 4 questions, you will know what to do with every single worry, then you're not left with any of them. So hopefully those are some really quick hints and tips and techniques just to know what to do with your anxiety, especially when we're in lockdown and we're kind of sat with them a lot of the time.
That's great. Thank you very much, Myra. I found that very useful. Just to let everyone know, if you've joined a bit late, feel free to type questions, or there's a button where you can raise your hand if you've got any questions for any of the participants during this webinar. Okay, great. So the next question was for Sakoon Counselling. So Ayesha, how can you deal with the anxiety that you get from uncertainty? The possibility of something bad happening is a constant fear.
Thank you. So as it's already been mentioned, it's this idea of recognizing that it's absolutely normal to experience these emotions. We are going through a time of uncertainty and confusion. This is our new normal. So it's so important that we try to embrace and accept this new change, and we let go of old routines. So rather than thinking about why is this happening, when will this end, will something bad happen, we need to start to establish routines, new routines that will help us. And research actually shows that when you embrace change, it actually helps us cope far better. So some examples to take away is just this idea of maintaining our basic needs is so essential. Are you sleeping well? Are you eating healthily? Are you drinking lots of fluids? Are you exercising? This is so important, and this will help us to manage our emotions better. Also, this idea of checking in on how you feel. So recognizing what are the triggers? What is it that makes you feel stressed or fearful or upset? Is it looking at the media or finding out what's going on in the news? Is that what heightens your stress? Or is it by being in the house and you're not used to being in the house? You're so used to being outside, and being in the house makes you feel really frustrated, or you feel really sort of claustrophobic. Is that what's connecting your anxiety and some of the emotions that you're going through? So one example that you can also think about is allocating a worry time. Okay, so what we tend to do is we tend to constantly ruminate. We constantly allow these worried thoughts to take over us. So allocating a worry time, saying to yourself, I'm going to be thinking about these thoughts on this particular day and this particular time. So whether that's once a day, every day, or twice a week, you've got to sort of think about what would that look like for you. So you really have to discipline yourself. And when you do that, what you're doing is you're reducing the negative thoughts having an impact on you on a day-to-day basis, and you're allocating that time, and you have that comfort of knowing I will be addressing this. We also need to think about focusing on the positive. Okay, there is positivity. So think about what has this brought in your life. Has it brought closer connections with your family? Seeing globally how much compassion and kindness there is, just recognizing that and how that's built our society more than we had before. Have you learned something new? Got involved into a new hobby that you never usually get the time for, and now we've got that time to do these new things? Has it helped you to get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? So being, alhamdulillah, having Ramadan during lockdown, although it was a really difficult and different experience, there were so many opportunities and resources for us to get closer to him. And the importance of support. Okay, we're all human, we all need support. We need to connect with others. We're social creatures. And just connecting with others will reduce isolation, will reduce anxiety, and it will be in a very different format. So rather than physically, would be through calls, online, doing things virtually, and there's so many resources out there right now. And finally, just to mention that we do have a self-help guide on anxiety managing, sort of giving you tips and strategies of how you can deal with it better. So do go onto our website, Sakoon, sakoon.co.uk.
That's great. Thank you very much, Ayesha. Liked what you said about, you know, connecting with your family and doing things that we didn't have necessarily much time for before. So actually leads me to one of the other questions that we had. So what happens when, you know, your family relations aren't that good and it can be quite toxic? So this is a question we had in for Kathleen from Approachable Parenting. How do we balance avoiding toxicity to promote good mental health among family, including those who you live with Islamic views on family? So maybe, you know, there are people who are now having to spend lockdown with their family and they might find it quite a toxic environment, but how do we balance that with, you know, Islamic values of respecting your parents and things like that? Oh, I do need to unmute you. I apologise. Just to remind everyone that you feel free to raise your hand and also to ask questions during this.
Yeah, I think there. Assalamu alaikum, everybody. Yes, it's a great question how we can prevent this, because toxicity can come in, and it's a hard word actually. It's a very strong word, and it comes in many ways. And it may have been something that's been always there, always present in the family, or it may be something new due to this relationships and what's happening at the moment now. And if I give you just some examples of families that are close together, living as extended families, you may have now the brother-in-law and his wife living there. She was pregnant and all of a sudden she's had a baby, and now all the attention is on that brother and the baby, and you feel, oh, what's going on here? The feelings are not great for you. That's happening now, that I'm not worthy, I'm not considered, or I don't feel valued anymore. to the other extreme where you have young people coming home from university and from workplaces. Maybe they lived in their own accommodation, own flats, and have moved home and have had that freedom in their own places of living. And here they are now at home, and they feel that they are back like a 10 or 12-year-old child again, that their parents are opening their bedroom doors and coming in and not respecting their space, and then they don't feel valued there as well. And of course it could be the other way, that they could be coming home and going into a child mode and saying to their parents, can you make me this, can you do my washing, can you do it? So it's very variable, the situation. So I suppose we really need to unpick each situation as it arises. And I could take over the whole session just talking about this, but I won't. I'll be very condensed indeed. I think the main things that parents that are listening in today should think of is, how can we diagnose the problem? What is it, this problem? Is this a continuous problem, or is this something new? How can I manage it? What's going on there? And actually trying to unpick the facts from the emotions there. And then dealing with that, trying to empathize with people, trying to listen to people, trying to communicate in a positive way, maybe use the 2-pen exercise. Is something we teach. You can only hold the pen when you're talking. So it's putting in boundaries in there around how we're dealing with each other and how we're using our space and our time as well. Boundaries is very important, especially if it's an extended family with children. There's a lot of competition around laptops, doing homework, doing work. Where do we do this? What space do we have? We've only got so many rooms in the house. Where do we all work? So it's putting in some boundaries in place and respecting each other for that, listening to each other, having empathy there for each other, trying to understand the other person. So it's not just putting yourself in their shoes, but really feeling how they feel and how they are understanding the situation is. And then try to be solution focused in how we approach things. If there's something that is causing you, and there's a lot being mentioned already about anxieties and emotions there, if it is something like this and something that's been ongoing, there's lots of my colleagues here that I would advise you to go and seek help, because help is there. All these organizations are working, all willing to help you, all willing to look after yourself and to make sure that you look after yourself. But it's the important thing is to do something about it. If we do what we've always done, we'll get what we've always got. So we need to do something new about it. And we know from our religion that nobody should be living in fear of their anxieties. And there can be, again, different spectrums of that. And we should be going and seeking help, that if there is domestic abuse or if it is already a toxic family, you need to seek help. The Prophet ﷺ never hit a woman or a child. So as I said, this is a very big question for a few minutes, but I'm trying to do my best to condense it from both angles. Please do seek help. Please do. Our Islam is telling us this. Go seek advice, get help. We know there's a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ where somebody was seen hit his slave across the face, and his advice, the Prophet said, you need to free this slave. This is a slave, this is not a member of our family. So if there's something happening in our family, please go and seek help. Inshallah. I'm sorry, I was kind of very broad on that. I hope it answered that question. Maybe the caller might like to come back with specific examples that we can deal with that situation in more detail.
That's great, thank you. We've had a message that just said, could you please explain again what you meant by holding the pen when speaking?
Oh, okay. So it's a 2-pen exercise. So a couple speaking together, we actually teach this exercise when people in our pregnancy to 3 course, when they've had the first baby, because we find that prior to children coming into the household, marriages, people get on fairly well with their own lives, and a lot of the difficulties don't arise until the child comes in, and when you have sleepless nights and other demands there, and a child is 24/7. It's not like a pet that you can leave. Even now we can't leave the house, but it's there present in the house the whole time, and you're working from home, so there's lots of stresses there. So we have the 2-pen exercise, that you hold the pen and you talk about what it is that you want. So you personalize it. I feeling like this, I would like. and you pass it to the other person and they do the same. So it is not blaming each other, it's taking responsibility, and it's unpicking your feelings from those facts and trying to solve both the situation or the issue and the feelings around it. And you can only speak when you're holding the pen. So it avoids all that conflict and that arguing. So sitting down nicely, having a conversation together and trying to be solution focused to find a solution to it.
That's great. Thank you so much, Kathleen. We did have someone with their hand up, but I think they've disappeared. So if you still would like to ask your question, then do put your hand up again. And obviously, if anyone wants to ask any questions, then do raise your hand or type it to me in the bottom. So let's get on to our next question, inshallah. Sheikh Saeed, we've had one for you, which says that Ramadan was so difficult. I usually go to the mosque 2 or 3 times a day throughout the year. Ramadan is the highlight of my year and I feel so empty. I feel I've done something really wrong to not be allowed to go to Allah's house. I'm praying more and doing more dua, but it's not helping. Is there anything else I can do to cope until the mosques are open again?
Inshallah, Jazakumullah khair. And I think is a common thread that previous sisters have already mentioned, that it's about normalizing the process first. And I think a lot of people feel this feeling, you know, that part of our expression of our closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is by attending the masjid and by having this closeness and attachment to the masjid. So that's a normal to feel like this when you are unable to visit the masjid. That's the first thing. So, you know, many people feel that, and you're not alone in this feeling. Secondly, is to realize that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not burden us more than our capacity. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in the end of Surah Al-Baqarah, chapter 2, لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا وسعها. Allah will not burden a soul more than that soul's capacity. So it's really important to understand that these things are out of our control. We have not chosen not to go to the masjid, but we're not able to go to the masjid because of for our own safety and the safety of others. And also Islam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is with us wherever we are. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you can make there's flexibility. The Prophet ﷺ said in the hadith, جُعْلِيَتْ الْأَرْضُ مَسْجِدًا وَطَهُورًا. Indeed, the earth or the land has been made for me pure and a masjid. So we can pray wherever we are, wherever you turn your face, you will find Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and He is with us wherever we happen to be. So it's about not being too hard on yourself, and also seeing that your heart is attached to the masjid is a good sign, inshallah, of your iman, because the Prophet ﷺ said, you know, the people who Allah will shade them on the day of judgment, where there's no shade except the shade of Allah, a person whose heart is attached to the masajid. So inshallah, instead of looking at this as a negative, see it as a positive, that your heart is attached to the masjid, inshallah, and you connect with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at home. It is from the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ that he used to do the nafil prayers at home. So he will play the obligatory prayer in the masjid, and he will do the prayer which is nafil at home. So also we make our homes masajid. We make our homes a basis for our connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I can understand fully, because the masjid provides so much more, because it's connection with people, connection with, you know, as well as your connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is about, you know, finding space where you can just go and experience peace and tranquility. And I will also urge you to create that also at home at the moment until the masajid opens. So find yourself a spot in the house where you just make that, you know, designated for your prayer, or where you can go and sit quietly, you can go and do some reading, and make it beautiful, make it clean, and somewhere where you feel comfortable. So that's very important. And realizing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's forgiveness is more than what we can do, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you know, mercy encompasses everything. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who created us. He knows that we can't go to the masjid at the moment. So just don't be hard on yourself. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, مَا يُرِيدُ اللَّهُ بِعَذَابِكُمْ إِن شَكَرْتُمْ وَآمَنْتُمْ. Allah does not want to punish you if you are grateful and you believe. And also for us is also maybe a point of reflection. also to appreciate the ni'mah of the masajid, you know, and when the masajid are open, inshallah, we value them more, and we value the ability to go to the masjid more, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us this ability to go to the masjid and to connect with Allah, to connect with others, to connect with the congregation. So inshallah, that also should be a source of comfort, that this difficulty is temporary, is not permanent. Inshallah, it will pass, and inshallah, you'll be able to go back to the masjid, inshallah, and perform your prayer in congregation, inshallah, in jama'ah, and you'll be able to visit the masjid, inshallah, once again. And if the doors of the masjid are closed, the doors to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are always open. So seek Allah's, you know, make dua, seek connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through the Quran, through the prayers, through finding quiet time for yourself to reflect and to use this seclusion as, you know, with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and to be able to use it, inshallah, as a source of comfort during these difficult times.
Great, thank you so much. And someone's messaged in whilst you've been speaking. So we've had a message from Ghazala who said, feel Allah is with you. Masjid is just a place. Having Allah with you is more peaceful. Specify a corner of your house as the place to pray and connect.
Absolutely. Jazakallah khair, Sister Ghazala. And also, you know, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in the Quran, chapter 50, says, indeed, we have created man, and we know what is going on inside his or her own self. And we are closer to them than the jugular vein. Yeah. So imagine your jugular vein that you have in your neck. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is closer to you than that. And He is with you wherever you are. So inshallah, that connection should enable us, inshallah, to feel that the presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in our life, throughout our lives, inshallah.
That's great. Thank you so much, Sheikh Saeed. So I guess, you know, Ramadan has been a difficult time for most of us in the Muslim community, as well as, you know, dealing with Ramadan during lockdown. We've also had to deal with a lot of bereavements in the community, and we've had one question on that for Sister Sahar from Mindworks, which says, my husband died from COVID. I wasn't allowed to visit the hospital. I couldn't go to the funeral. Nobody visited me for weeks. I live alone and feel so lonely. It's too difficult. I need advice to be able to cope with this change. Let me just find it. I'm pressing on mute and it's not on mute. There we go.
Oh, I think I had to press it on my side. Jazakallah khair, Jamilla. Assalamu alaikum, everybody. Firstly, I'd like to say how sorry I am to hear this news. Inna Allahi wa inna ilayhi rajiun. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala raise all those who have passed through this virus and grant them Jannat al-Firdaus and the status of Shaheed, inshallah. Ameen. When we are with a loved one and they have passed and we haven't been able to see them, it's really trying and very hard. And I wouldn't know how that felt myself, but just knowing people who are going through this, it's just hard to hear it. Alhamdulillah, make it easy for everybody. Firstly, I'd like to say that when, you know, we are not present with somebody who's in the hospital, and this is the hardest thing, to not be able to say the goodbyes that we want to hold the hands that we want to, just to be there, and there's no way to see them. It's not, there's no comfort we can give to somebody in that and to give them some solace and peace and tranquility that we really want to do, and we can hug them and hold them. And this is one of the hardest things that I'm hearing every day. Unfortunately, and I'm sure there's others here who in the counselling field who would know how this is with clients and to help them. So it's hard to say that goodbye, even harder for people who can't come and be with their loved ones. You know, this lockdown, the isolation rules, it's really hard. And there are ways to say goodbyes. I know one of the sisters earlier talked about journaling. And Sister Ayesha and Myira talked about journaling, how this can help us through writing our thoughts down, writing a letter to our loved one, just to write. It's just a physical act, the physical act of not being able to go to the funeral, for instance. many of us haven't been able to do that. But doing something physical is really important, and there you can find some solace, some around just letting go of those anxieties that you might be feeling at the time, that alone feeling. But when we're talking to our Lord, to Allah, you know, having those conversations, inshallah. We can think about going to open spaces. Just talking about this morning. How do we say goodbye? You know, if we have an open space, maybe we have a garden, or maybe we don't. Just having that time to speaking into the universe, talking aloud, talking to our loved ones that have left us, talking to Allah, asking for that help and guidance. Thinking about those really good memories that one would have had with their loved one, the things that they would have done together, those memories, those wise words even, and we can hear them talking to us and taking that with us forward in our everyday. This is really important, because I think this is, we're left with being on our own. We could be in a room full of people, but being on our own. But when somebody is actually living on their own, it's really hard to find any solace. But hearing the voices of our loved ones, those wise words, things that made you laugh, things that made you cry, but having that closeness and keeping that, not letting go of that, is really important. The other thing would be also is doing acts of kindness, doing something to help yourself, maybe volunteering. I know there's lots of things we can't do at the moment, but we can speak to a neighbour, we can phone somebody, we can do some shopping for somebody, or cook for a neighbour, for instance. That just makes us, you know, gets us going out to do something. You know, obviously keeping within the social distances of things, but that brings us closer. Not just to the loved one, but to others in the community, and also to Allah as well. That's really important to maintain that. Alhamdulillah, you know, there's so many things that we can do, practical things as well. We can ring up family or friends, we can have a conversation with them on the phone, we can do the web chats like we're doing right now. We can also do something that's really important, that around Sadqa Jariyah, giving in charity, an ongoing charity for those that have left us and have passed away. And I think this is one of the things that a lot of people are doing at the moment as well. And I think that's, you know, just the common one is building a well for somebody's, in somebody's name, or being part of a school and helping children's education, because this is about forward thinking about how are we going to, for our next generation, how are we going to help, and how can we leave behind a Sadqa Jariyah for them, a good deed on their name. This is something we can do for them, with that love that we have, you know, inshallah. So we know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he tests us in so many different ways, alhamdulillah. And Brother Saeed mentioned about, you know, Allah, we know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he doesn't burden anybody with more than he can bear. And I think this is something we need to really think about. You know, we know it's going to be very individual, you know, and it's about how we deal with these emotional states that we're in right now, the physical states we're in, the spiritual state that we're in. You know, it's about how do we manage this on a daily basis, because we're living every day as it comes at the moment. Speaking to family, friends, as I said, you know, consider going through some maybe counselling, getting that extra support if you don't have anybody around. There's many organisations around here, mashallah, even on today, that you can access. But it's really important to give yourself that time, that support that you need. It's a very individual, and ultimately that self-care is the key thing here. I mean, these are just a few points in the short space of time, but inshallah, I hope that they do help. And do what works for you. This is one of the things you have to remember. What works for you may not work for somebody else. So, you know, this is it's a situation we're in right now, and how do we best cope with it right now? But do access the support. There's lots of organizations here that you can tap into, inshallah. I hope that really helps the caller that raised the question. And making lots of dua is the last thing I'd like to leave you with is, you know, when we make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he hears us, he knows our pain, he knows what's best for us. He's the planner of everything, inshallah.
Great, thank you so much, Sahar. So we've had a question in for Inspirited Minds. So that's you, Farhana. Let me just find it. Okay, this is from Al Richards, and he's asking, what opportunities have you seen? Oh, sorry, I can't see. So basically, have mosques and other Muslim organisations had an increased interest in mental health during this time of COVID and lockdown, and are Muslim communities now reaching out for support? Oh, hang on.
Great, that's a really good question actually, and in a short summary, yes, a lot of organizations, a lot of mosques have seen the importance of mental health during these times, so much so that there's been an influx of webinars since COVID-19. Like there's webinars like left, right and center. You just like information overload. But alhamdulillah, like it's really, really like heartwarming to see that a lot of people are placing importance and prioritizing mental health now. And you're getting mental health in different areas, like, you know, parenting, or, you know, your own mental health, self-care, being resilient. I've seen so many webinars, and I wish I could attend all of them. At the same time, it's important to acknowledge that there's so much information that you can take in as one person and kind of process that yourself. So yeah, in short summary, there have been a lot of people that have placed importance in it, run webinars. There's been some organizations that have been running helplines as well. I think there was this mosque in East London somewhere that started running a listening service, which was so impressive. A mosque running a listening service helpline in such a short space of time, mashallah. And it just goes to show to us that, you know, we're progressing, and inshallah after COVID-19 I pray that it still continues and we still place the same importance on mental health equally to physical health. So yeah, Al Richards, we are as a community working together to emphasize that mental health is equally as important as our physical health, our spiritual health. Yeah, I hope that answered the question.
Thank you so much, Farhana. That's very helpful. Great. So the next question on my list is for MWNUK, so that's Faeeza. Someone has written in saying, I was meant to get married, but our relationship broke down, and coupled with lockdown, I'm just not coping. I keep randomly crying, struggling to concentrate, and I desperately want to feel normal again. Do you have any tips? Okay.
Hi everyone. I think that's a really good question. Actually, they've all been really great. I think relationships are definitely feeling the strain of being in lockdown, and it's important to understand, I guess, that right now we all need all of the things that have been spoken about already today. So self-care is so important, but reaching out and identifying that there is a problem and taking a step is actually, you know, quite commendable. So when relationships are not working, to recognize that it's not, and to take a step back from it and, you know, make decisions about it is really important. I think what we want to echo again is actually there are lots of support services available. So the Muslim Women's Network Helpline operates Monday to Friday, 10 a.m. until 4 p.m. It's there to offer emotional support. It's there to offer an ear to listen to what you're experiencing. And sometimes that's a really good starting point when you have a problem or a situation that you're trying to deal with, is just to speak to someone. Often we recommend, you know, speak to someone that you trust, friends, family. That may not be as easy right now. You may not be in a space to speak. You may want to email, you may want to text, you may want to web chat. So you can do all of those things with the Muslim Women's Network Helpline, but other services like we have the Muslim Youth Helpline on the call today, and others also. And then if you felt that actually you need further support. We've, you know, this call probably has some of the best counsellors in the country working with the Muslim community here today. So, you know, I would say if you think you need more support, then definitely reach out. But in terms of tips, just managing emotions right now, it's good that you've recognized that it's difficult. It's good that you're seeking support. And self-care and kindness to yourself is, you know, we had Muslim Mental Health Awareness Week last week, and kindness was the theme. And kindness to ourselves, I think, is the lesson that we all need to practice more. Me first, and I'd recommend doing lots of the other things that our previous panelists have spoken about in terms of managing anxiety, managing worry. So I'm not going to repeat those things, but figure out kind of what works for you, and definitely seek help and seek conversations and seek support.
Great, thank you so much, Faeeza. We've got Dr. Omer. Omer's raised his hand, so I think he's got something to say.
It's just to add in what Sister Faeeza Vaid has said. I think it's important just to make sure that if this person is depressed, to be aware and to take positive action. So most of the time, things like behavioral activation, i.e. doing things, being active, doing exercise if you haven't been able to do that, speaking to others, that's really important. But if you have done that and these symptoms persist, I would really encourage this person to speak to their GP and seek medical or mental health support. Anyone can access CBT or otherwise via their local IAP service, IAPT service in almost every borough. Just put that in and put the borough name and they'll show you how you can access it. It's self-referral. Waiting lists are usually down to 6 to 4 weeks, but they do expect you to attend and they will discharge you very happily if you don't attend your meetings. But in a serious note, it's probably worthwhile speaking to your GP because they might well be aware of recognized local services, whether they're charities or otherwise, with whom they've had experience. And so just don't leave it to chance. Make sure that you do access support, because if it is depression, that can get a habit of getting worse, especially if it's at a moderate level, moderate to severe, where it won't resolve on its own like a mild depression might.
Great, thank you. And I believe Sister Farhana wanted to add something as well.
Yeah, you made a really good point, Dr. Omer. In terms of therapy by the NHS, you do get it for free, and the waiting time currently is shorter because there's not a lot of people that have been seeking support from the NHS. So they are prioritizing those individuals who are struggling with COVID-19. And even if you don't want to seek therapy by a clinician from the NHS, your GP would give you alternative, support services like Mind, there's an app called Headspace, which you can get access to, and other range of things. The reason why I'm saying it is because I've already reached out to my GP about my mental health struggles. So it's really important that we do reach out to our GP or an alternative clinician or therapist, whoever can help you during this time. Also, I work for IAPT and Talking Therapy, so I'm just going to give you 3 tips that you might be going through. So the 3 tips are RNP, so routine. So given that we're in COVID-19, our routine has changed. We're not going outside for work or going outside to uni, X, Y, Z. So routine is something that we need to be mindful of. What do you do, or what have you done usually in your routine that is missing now? Necessary. So those are the things, or those are tasks or activities that you, if you don't do it, there's negative consequences, like paying the bills or not doing your deadlines, meeting your deadlines. And the last one is P, which is pleasurable activities. Now, I miss going to the gym. The gym is closed. I'm really sad about that. And it's going to make me sad. It's going to make me more deactivated and passive. So I need to think of alternative ways to be active, whether if it's yoga, whether if it's going for a walk. So R, routine, necessary, P for pleasure. These are the 3 different activities that research has shown in order to help you improve your well-being and to make you a bit happier. So changing your behavior, like Dr. Omer said, behaviorally activating yourself will help you to feel better about yourself. And just on top of that, I know I'm probably running out of time here, 5 ways of well-being. So you can Google this. It is recommended by the NHS. Inspirited Minds have an article about Sunnah and 5 ways of well-being. Again, it touches on routine, necessary, and pleasurable. So connecting with others, being active, taking notice, which is being mindful of yourself, identifying when you feel anxious or when you feel sad. How do you notice it in your body physically? You have to identify it first before you can come up with a solution. Learning, I know I've delayed, well, I'm talking about my personal experiences. You have a list of things that you want to do when you're working full-time outside of COVID-19. Make that list. Have you started making or doing stuff in that list? So one of the things for me was learning Arabic. I still haven't done it because I've been struggling. But, you know, be patient with yourself, be compassionate to yourself, be kind to yourself. And I think that's one thing that I've learned to do. Just take time, just sit there, go for a walk, think, allow yourself to think, and then inshallah make dua that you come up with a solution or Allah gives you that solution. And then give. You know, Ramadan has just gone by. We were so giving, you know, alhamdulillah. I'm hoping everyone's learned a lot from it as well. Again, you could give not just in charity, but a smile or, you know, a little compliment or saying thank you. Those are the things that you can do. So I'm just going to push you towards the NHS, 5 steps to mental well-being. And in the Inspirited Minds website has a lot of articles that you can read up about in terms of being behaviorally active and how to support your emotional well-being. So that's my 2 pence. Jazakallah khairan.
Someone just said, could you very quickly go over the second letter? Was it N for necessary?
Yeah.
Didn't understand what you meant by that.
So necessary are activities or tasks that if you don't do it, there's consequences for it. So let's say, for instance, paying the bills. If you are not meeting your deadline to pay the bills, then there are going to be consequences for it, whether if it's, you know, being in debt, you know, consequences around you not paying it, basically. Especially another additional point to add to that is that university deadlines. If you don't do your deadline, if you don't meet those deadlines, then there are consequences in terms of failing. Like I'm at university at the moment, I had to report to my personal tutor about me not meeting my deadline because I've been struggling a lot. I know I look all right, but this is a really difficult time. And I think all of us need to be compassionate to one another and ourselves mostly. And also communicate with others when we're not feeling well. It's okay not to feel, it's okay not to be okay, basically. So necessary are activities that if you don't do it within a certain time, there'll be consequences for it. So try and be mindful of those activities that you need to do within a certain deadline, helping to write it down. And as Sahar and Myira said, writing it down really helps. It helps to process things, it helps to structure things. And in a time where we're just in our minds and thinking about it, we don't have that structure. We need to write it down and just kind of plan it out, and that would inshallah help. I hope that answered your question. If not, private message me and I'll be able to answer it possibly more.
That is great. Thank you very much. The next question we've got in is for Zohra from MYH. This is from Vaid Hussain. He asks, how do we get young people and young adults to open up about mental health, especially boys, those more specifically associate themselves with groups of other boys or gangs?
Salam. Well, that's a really interesting question, actually. And one of the things that's, I guess I'm going to say, which sounds, well, hard, I suppose, is the best way to start getting young people to open up about their mental health is to open up about your mental health. And if you take a moment to think about how difficult it might be for you to share how you feel, your worries, your concerns, things like that, it's actually really, really hard. But it's worth doing because once you say something, it makes it easier for the other person to then open up. You can think about it in terms of how you talk to other adults, for example. If someone starts talking about their anxiety, it kind of feels like you have permission to talk about your anxiety because you know you're not going to be judged. So I think the first thing is to have those conversations in an honest and equal kind of way where you're on their level because you're talking about your own mental health so they can talk about their own mental health and their worries and concerns and things like that. If you're pretending that everything is fine, then you're giving them the signal that you should also just try and be okay. And as everybody has said on the call already, it's okay not to be okay. We know everybody is struggling through something. A couple of other tips. I think normalizing mental health is really, really important. We all have our highs and our lows already in this call. Some people have talked about their own feelings in terms of where they are on their mental health. If I think about my own mental health in the last 2 months, there have definitely been some, I don't actually think I've had any highs actually. It's been pretty much, am I okay? And okay is good enough at the moment. And as long as you're okay and you're kind of coping, honestly, I feel like that's the maximum I can hope for in these kinds of circumstances. And that's fine. It's fine to just be okay. When you're not feeling okay also, it's really important to remember that it's not a sign of weakness. It's perfectly normal. The same way that we would with our physical health, we need to take time out to recover from things when it comes to our mental health, and also to find out what's causing us to feel this way. I think that's a general kind of society thing that we need to think of. So if someone says, if you're meeting someone, even if it's on Zoom, for example, it might be important to just take a couple of minutes and say, oh, hang on a second, how are you doing? If you had a broken leg, you'd say, well, I broke my leg and it really hurts. But actually how you're doing in terms of your mental health, feel free to share that as well. Because again, it opens up that conversation. It helps people to talk about that sort of thing. I'd also say that ignoring the problem won't make it go away. So if you're worried particularly about young people who are involved in gangs or things like that, I'd say just pretending it's not happening isn't going to help. So see if you can have those conversations yourself. See if you can reach out to other people for support. People like teachers are actually quite handy when it comes to talking to young people, and mentors and things like that. And a lot of programs are still running online. There are also other places to refer to when it comes to mental health. It's quite important to even just suggest to the young people, oh, you could call XYZ Helpline. So you could call Muslim Youth Helpline, or you could call IAPS. They might give you some support. What I'd say, my experience at the Helpline, is that people might even say to you, oh, no, I don't care. I don't need that helpline. I'm not doing it. But they'll still call. You might not know it, but they'll still call, which is important. So just make sure that they've got those resources, that they know where it is that they can go. And also just to remember, if you're feeling that way, it's important to say to young people, if you're feeling that way, you're not the only person. We've all had our highs and lows in mental health, particularly during all these really, really difficult circumstances. It's not just you. So making it normal for a young person to just talk about their mental health and say, actually, you know what? You might be struggling. I'm also struggling. Sometimes we all struggle. And it's the same thing with your friends as well. So when you're a teenager, it's quite hard to know that it's not just you that's going through this issue, but actually other people feel the way you feel too. And it's quite nice to not feel alone. For more though, I would Google. There's a lot of information out there. We've got a blog at MYH. I'm pretty sure every single organization on this call has some information out there. And again, when it comes to talking to young people specifically, I'd also look at Approachable Parenting. They've got some great resources out there, and classes actually in terms of how to talk to young people about mental health issues and things like that. So there's a load of resource out there. And if you want some more signposting, feel free to email the helpline at help@mych.org.uk, and we can send you a bunch of links to all of those.
Great, thank you so much, Zohra. So our next question is for Dr. Omer from BEMA. They've noticed that their grandmother has been getting quieter, preferring to stay in her room. Her brother died 4 months ago and she worries about her health. So this person is worried that their grandmother may be suffering from depression. So maybe, as well as answering that, just a general kind of, how can we look for signs of depression? How can we notice them? What can we do for someone who we think is suffering?
Jazakallah khair for that question. Yes, so before jumping on the depression bandwagon, so to speak, is I think if someone has died recently, there is a normal process for us to grieve for it. And it may well be that it lasts for a number of weeks and days. I think the recommended time would be 3 days, but it's very difficult for people in a circumstance where you haven't had the opportunity to grieve properly, to go through a funeral, to speak with others, to have that interaction, physical interaction with your family, with friends and others. That's all part of the grieving process, but this is quite an unusual situation. So she may well be in a grieving process, which is normal, perfectly normal, and to go through these bits and pieces is again normal and not necessarily part of a depressive episode. That being said, it's really important that she's able to, that anyone who you feel is depressed are able to function in a way that doesn't impair what they're supposed to be doing. So that means if they're supposed to be going to work, are they still able to go to work on a consistent basis? Are they able to do the cooking? Are they able to do the normal household activities? You know, all those different things. Look after children, you know, the sort of job descriptions of a grandmother, I think, and not being one, I don't know for sure, but that's what mine used to do. Lots of cooking, lots of cleaning, and lots of looking after us. So is her moods and the way in which they're acting impairing that? If you're a working age person, are your moods impairing your ability to hold it together for these meetings? And also social activities, are you less likely? If those are the case, then I wouldn't just call it a grief reaction, and then it may well be a depressive episode. And again, the previous advice applies. Go speak to your GP, speak to a trusted friend, make sure that you're talking to someone about how you're feeling. And I think Sister Zohra's made a very good point that it's important to talk about your own health, mental health, as well as a well-being and illness, if you have any, and that sort of facilitates someone else to open up about it. That doesn't mean you give them a 20-hour monologue of your problems. It's just an opening line or two to sort of facilitate waiting for that to come back, and certainly give them lots of space. Provide them with silence. It's okay to use the silence. If you ask them a question because they don't respond within a couple of minutes, that's okay. They may be thinking, how do I respond? How do I phrase this in a way that they don't think I'm crazy, or they don't think I need to go to hospital or something. You don't know what's in their mind, and so it's just important to do that. And if you don't get a response, just say, well, look, I can see it's playing a lot on your mind. Why don't we try this again in a couple of hours? And come back, and don't see it as your right to understand and know. Because you've demonstrated concern to speak to them, it doesn't necessarily mean that they have to talk to you about it. So providing space is really important. So, and then accessing support, as I said, from your GP, IAPT, etc. I think those would be really important. And then I think at the more severe end, especially in the elderly, because that's where the more severe end of depression can be more problematic, is when people stop eating, lose weight, and feel that they no longer want to start living. Now, these aren't, we as members of the Muslim community and the Islamic faith are not immune to those feelings. It's just a case of how we deal with them. So it's just important that we give people options. We talk to them about it and say it's okay to have these thoughts, but this is what we deal with them, rather than saying, no, don't have these thoughts, that is wrong. I think it's important just to work with it and work them through it, because in normal circumstances maybe they wouldn't, but in these circumstances they probably would. Yeah, that's probably most of what I said. I think in terms of treatment, yes, there is CBT, interpersonal therapy, and a few other bits of therapy for depression. Medication is also indicated, especially in moderate or severe depression, and it's just as efficacious as, that means it's got the same amount of benefit as therapy in larger trials. And both are probably better than one alone. I think I would probably not persist with one for a long time if there's no benefit, and it'd be really important if you can get some sort of objective measures on how people are doing. So something on, it doesn't have to be a form like a Beck's Depression Index or something like that. It could be something very simple, that he or she was doing X for 10 minutes, and now she's able to do it for an hour. That's a great measure, but making sure that you've got something that you perhaps diarize, that because you won't see progression over weeks, but you'll see it if you've got a single point you can look back on. So some sort of progression. And if therapy or medication is not working, it's important to say, look, we have had it for 4 weeks and it's not working. Can we review this? Can we seek alternative views? Can we have someone else? Yeah, that's all I'd say about it.
Myira.
Just wanted to add on, I think really from what everyone on the panel has said today, just a couple of points really that just kind of I'm sat with. One, which is, as a practitioner, very often we get a lot of Muslim clients come to counselling, and very often the nervousness or anxiety about accessing therapy is, is it un-Islamic, or is it going to take me outside the fold of Islam? So I kind of want to really make the point here that everything that's been suggested today, including accessing therapy and any modality of therapy, is Islamic. It doesn't take you outside of the faith. So please see all of these suggestions today as opportunities or methods or means to help you. So first of all, I kind of want to stress that point. Second of all, there are, clearly from today, there are so many ways in which we can support our own mental health as well as the mental health of our friends and family and loved ones. But it's not a one-size-fits-all. So again, if you take anything from today, please take the resources and the suggestions and the hints and tips that have been given today and shared today. See what works for you. Please don't give up after the first thing hasn't worked, because it's about what's going to resonate with your own emotional and mental health and just where you are on that spectrum. Equally, if you are going to go and share, and I hope you do, go and share these then with your friends and family and loved ones, again, try not to be prescriptive about, well, this has worked for me, so it's got to work for you. Again, it's not a one-size-fits-all approach. It's about seeing what is going to help you, just like with medication. It's about finding the right dosage and the right type of medication and the right drug that's going to work for you individually. It's the same with your mental health. So those are kind of the two main points I kind of really want to stress from today, because there have been some amazing ideas and resources shared today. See what works for you. Please don't give up after the first thing. That if it hasn't worked, try something else. And equally share this amongst all your friends and family and loved ones, and see and support them in them trying to find out what's going to work for them as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really excellent point, especially your first one around the stigma that pertains around mental disorders, and the fact that that people can be very prescriptive about what you need to do in order to alleviate those conditions, i.e. you need to do X number of du'as, or you have to do this particular type of du'a, or that it's a sign that you're not really a strong enough Muslim. And I think those sort of things, those arguments wouldn't apply if you turned up with a broken leg. And it's exactly the same in my mind, a chest infection, a broken leg, or in some descriptions, a broken head of some level or other. They need time and methods to mend them. We don't have the best practice at the moment. Broken legs are very easy in the sense that you just put the leg together and you put a cast around. We know how that works. There are a few other complications around it, I will admit, but we might not necessarily have got the right process, individual process for each person. Our minds are very complicated areas, but it's not to say that it's a weakness, and it stigmatizes it further by us being quite prescriptive around how we need to approach, or what it probably indicates about you as a person because you've got this condition or not.
There's so much guidance in the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ in terms of how we deal with these issues at times of difficulty. The Prophet ﷺ, when his son Ibrahim passed away, he wept and he had tears in his eyes, ﷺ, and they told him, "Oh, even you, Prophet of Allah?" He said, "Yes, it is a mercy that Allah places in our heart." He said, "Indeed, the eyes become tearful and the heart becomes sad. And we only say what is pleasing to our Lord. To Allah we belong, unto him we shall return. O Ibrahim, we are saddened by your departure, by your loss." So the Prophet ﷺ named the emotion, and he identified that emotion of sadness. And in the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ, there's a year called the year of sadness, where the Prophet ﷺ lost his wife Khadija and his uncle Abu Talib, who was his biggest supporter. So these things are, the stigma often is not Islamic, the stigma is cultural. And we need to separate between what is cultural and what is Islamic, and that's really important.
If we've got time just for one more question that's been asked here. So someone's anxious about their husband going back to work, anxious that she could, contract COVID-19, but she's also really enjoyed him being home and feels like she's become attached to him. So what advice would anyone give for attachment issues? Before I go, Sheikh Saeed, do you have any advice?
In terms of attachment, I think the main thing in terms of when we have attachment issues is to first anchor ourselves, by looking at our own kind of relationship in terms of our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala first. And then through that, to look at our own relationship with ourselves, because often we're very hard on ourselves and we're very judgmental of ourselves and very self-critical. And it's really important that we show compassion and mercy to ourselves. You know, every day in our prayer, 17 times a day, if we only pray the obligatory prayer, we say Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim, the most compassionate, most merciful. So the attachment is about how we look at our own relationship with our own self, our own relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then our relationship with others. And to realize sometimes, you know, we had those who have difficulty in their upbringing or never had any care with, you know, by their caregivers, you know, positive care. To realize that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is most merciful and He loves, you know, His servants. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is so pleased when you tend to Him more than, you know, you've been far away from your mom, for example. When we are far away from our mothers, we've been overseas or on a trip. When we come back, our mom is so pleased to see us, you know, fit and healthy and back. The Prophet ﷺ said, you know, Allah is more happy when you return to Him than a child is happy when her son or daughter returns to her. So by returning to Allah, by connecting with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and holding to the rope of Allah, when we feel everything around us is unstable, when we feel everything around us is not connecting us, we start with that connection, inshallah. And the most important, as all the brothers and sisters said, Jazakumullah khair, is always seek help. Seeking help is a sign of courage. Seeking help is a sign of strength. Seeking help is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants you to do, is to rely on Allah and do everything in your capacity to change your circumstances, inshallah. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, Allah will not change the condition of people until they change what is within themselves. So by seeking help, by doing what you can, inshallah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will open doors for you.
Thank you very much. Ayesha, you had something to add?
Yes, I just wanted to also just add this idea of it is a temporary period that we're in. And within this period, we've also got to think a little bit about what are the opportunities that we can take away from this experience. So the reality is we do have to go back to work, and we do need to go back into the sort of aspects of living our life, whether we're doing that now or whether we need to go and do that going forward. But we need to also think about what has this added into our relationship. So when it comes to your spouse, how has it been positive in this experience? There have been cases where, yes, it's created difficulties and conflict, but I've also come across cases where it's brought far much more connection and closeness between spouses. And one of the key aspects that I've come across is this idea of now prioritizing their relationship as opposed to prioritizing work and other factors in their life. And that really makes a huge change in people's relationships. So just thinking a little bit about how you did things before to now and what you can add into your life can be really helpful. And that's something I'm going to be taking away as well, this opportunity of doing more with my children and doing different things with different people, connecting with other people that I never got the opportunity to. And just also the idea of the positivity of there's evidence of there's more safety, there's a lot of measures in place when people do go out. You've got to think about the positives and the importance of tawakkul, having that trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Everything is in His control. He is, and just leave your burdens and your worries to Him, but do be safe and do take them measures, inshallah.
Thank you. Myira, did you have anything to add?
Just really quickly, when this call was talking about the attachment to her husband and him going back to work, what I'm immediately feeling is this sense of loss that she feels, that what she's losing. So my question back to her would be, try and identify what it is that you feel that will be lost now in your relationship with him going back to work. Because by fear of anxiety, he's going to go back to work and I've grown used to and I've become attached to him being at home. If you identify specifically what it is, what are the needs that you feel that are being met by him by being at home? And by identifying those specific needs that are being met, you can then ensure that you can try and still have those needs being met moving forward. So it isn't just about him going back to work, but what is it that you had gained from him being at home? By being able to identify those, it means then that you can very consciously and intentionally make sure that they then are still present in your marriage and are there for when you do have time together. So try not to generalize it in terms of an anxiety from going back to work, but by recognizing what your own needs are, not only can you ensure that they're being met in the relationship, but maybe some of those needs can also be met through other friendships as well, and not just through him. So it's looking just a little bit deeper at what you were getting from that relationship.
Thank you. Kathleen, did you have anything to add?
No, I think a lot have been said and have positive things. Thank you to my colleagues there. There's it coming at it from different angles, which is wonderful. Of course, we as parents, we're looking at parenting, is children involved, and hopefully that if there is not children involved, I don't know any situation that, that the family will grow together and continue this and finding that time. And I like what Myira was saying there about your needs. It's what can you identify as those needs, and how can we keep that time? It may not be the same extended time, but we should also think it's the quality of time. So we might have shorter time, but make that quality time together as a couple so that you are really appreciating each other. And I think that has come to light with us in this situation of what do we appreciate in this world, in this transient world, when at any stage, we all know we're on the path, the final journey path, but this has become very much obvious right here and now, where we know practically every one of us, somebody that has passed away through COVID-19 or of a family that's suffering from it. So it's affecting all of us. So it's made death more prominent in our lives. So how are we more present? How are we going to spend that time together? How are we going to plan that time? How are we going to prepare fun things that we used to do together as we go out of this, and as her spouse returns to work or she returns to work, to maintain that relationship and that attachment that they have now.
That's great, thank you very much. I realise we've run about 10 minutes over, but we've had so many interesting questions. So thank you to everyone who's joined us today. Thank you to everyone who's asked questions, and thank you to all the participants for their knowledge and sharing all their great advice and tips. So we will end the call there. Thank you very much, everyone. Assalamu alaikum.